Yeah, so that weekend in League Two was very lively, much more so than the weekend before. So let's tell you about it. Every team from 2nd to 7th swapped places, and our runaway leaders were pulled back towards the pack again. Walsall failing to win. But we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to start with Carlisle 1, Swindon 5. George, for Swindon, they're not the story here, because this morning Mike Williamson has been sacked by Carlisle. There's so much to get into here. But quickly on Swindon, 4 league games won in a row for the first time since May 2022. They were 22nd when Ian Holloway took charge. They're now 14th and 14 points clear of the bottom 2, 10 points off the top 7. Talk me through this one.
Yeah, I mean, there was a great, as an Oxford fan talking about Swindon, there was another Oxford fan talking about Swindon doing the Sky commentary for this one in Cy Watts, and he pulled out a great stat before the game saying that no team in England's top 4 leagues had picked up more points in 2025 than Swindon with 13. Make that 16, and doing so in pretty resounding circumstances here. What's weird about this game is I reckon, firstly, I think there were 2 goals scored when the clock was on 46 minutes and 10 seconds, which is quite fun. One in the first half, one in the second half. Yeah.
Wow.
Which is good. But what's weird is that when the clock hit 46 minutes, I reckon Carlisle fans at home were thinking, better. You know, we were the better team there. We've been much better for the first 45 or so. And then they concede just before half-time, and they concede again just after half-time. They see Jones get sent off, the first of which, for 2 yellow cards, the first of which I think is another horrific decision, where he's booked for diving on the left wing when he's basically sandwiched between 2 players. I could just about understand the referee not giving a foul, although I do think it was a foul. But to give simulation for that is just, yeah, it's incorrect, it's wrong, and it's very unfair. But in the second half, it was an absolute rout from Swindon, who, Butterworth got the first goal, but after that, they were, Smith was in the forefront for most of it with his very good flick-ons, as are often the case, and they ran away with it relatively comfortably. It's not a huge surprise to see Carlisle Pub Company with Mike Williamson. I wouldn't say it hasn't really gone particularly well. The timing is quite funny because it's deadline day today, and from what you can glean from the players they brought in and either their profile but also their history of working with Williamson, it seems like he's had quite a big part in the squad overhaul, you would imagine. However, I don't know if you remember this. I know you do, but I'm talking to the listener here. When Williamson was appointed, before Carlisle made the decision to appoint him, they said that they were going to appoint a director of football and a manager, and they then appointed a head coach. And the director of football arrived at the end of October, so a month or so later, in the form of Rob Clarkson. Now, Rob Clarkson had previously been part of the FA as talent ID lead for England Pathway, which is quite a cool job, but also a very, very different job, I would say, to heading up football operations for a League Two club. And a cynical part of me just wonders if they've kind of leaned on Williamson here to offer a little bit of expertise in terms of spending quite a lot of money to bring quite good League Two players. And while some people are like, hold on, they've invested loads of money to bring in Williamson players, I would maybe say they've used Williamson quite well to bring in quite a good squad. And you look at this squad now, and it is an exceptional squad for League Two level. And now, as should always be the way, the director of football or the sporting director is now able to recruit his own manager, which is how it should be, because if you're a sporting director and you come in and there is already a manager there, I think that's always going to be a very difficult circumstance. And it's kind of been seen at Wycombe, where, Matt Bloomfield, doing such an incredible job there, was seemingly happy to move on. And maybe the Wycombe director of football happy to appoint his own man now in Mike Dodds. It wouldn't surprise me if it's a similar story here. And I personally think that Carlisle might be better off for it. Williamson is someone who has shown promise at Gateshead, shown promise at MK Dons, but often there are too many games like this where once the chips are down, they just get absolutely rolled over. And I think it's it's not an appealing job for a good manager because of Carlisle's league position. But if someone was to get this right and keep them up with the squad at their disposal, then they should be a team fighting out at the top end of League Two next season. I'm really intrigued as to who they go for. But yeah, I think had they sat Williamson 2 or 3 weeks ago, they might have struggled to get in the calibre of player they managed to bring in.
That is some galaxy brain stuff, mate. Well done.
Thank you.
That's my mind boggles that they've used a head coach.
I don't think it's like a deliberate ploy.
while just losing game after game and hitting the bottom of the Football League.
I definitely don't think it's a deliberate ploy in that sense. All I'm saying is I think the idea that they have made a ridiculous decision to invest in his players and sacked them deadline day, I don't necessarily think it's like that. I think they brought in very good players under Williamson's guidance and players that he's worked with before, and technically gifted players. And that should be a good squad going forward. And the fact that their current sporting director has presumably never been in charge of recruitment in a window before, has come in exactly 2 months before the window's opened, and has previously been working on England Pathway, Talent ID, so they're effectively really young players. Maybe it's not the worst idea to have someone who's been there and done it a little bit and able to recruit pretty well over the course of the month.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that they've sacked Mike Williamson. I don't think it's the wrong decision because his managerial tenure's been a bit of a disaster. 12 defeats in the league from 22, only 4 wins, scoring 16 goals in 22 games. Probably half or more were set-piece goals as well. So just never was able to get to the point where the team was playing what might be considered Mike Williamson football. You know, for me, the greatest error and the cause of that is not so much anything to do with him, because the situation he walked into was a club already listing, sliding quite significantly, was I think that they maybe held on to Paul Simpson for too long. And I think that going from Simpson to Williamson in the middle of the season with a squad that very clearly was not a fit for Williamson's football, and still having, what was it, about 15 games between then and the transfer window, which went largely terribly, to then build a whole new squad, well, not quite, but what have they signed, 11 or 12 players in the window so far, while playing games every 3 or 4 days and trying to get new players in from a standing start, get relationships on the pitch, play a certain kind of way that the team's been struggling with the fans on their back because they're playing so poorly. Just a complete mess all round. I mean, they need someone to come in. I mean, the squad is so big as well, which I think causes more problems than it does gives solutions in some ways. They just need someone to come in and essentially go, right, I'm going to play 3-5-2 or 3-4-3 or 4-3-3, whatever it is, and highlight a group of 18 players or 20 players that will be able to fit the roles in that formation. And unfortunately, you're going to have to pretty much bin off anyone that doesn't fit and just try and get a group up to speed, in rhythm, with partnerships all over the pitch that make sense, and defend properly and find a way of attacking that gets the most out of a group of players that should be able to be part of a League Two attack that creates chances and score goals. Carlisle are bottom of the Football League, and if they get relegated, it would be back-to-back relegations. And it's quite difficult to watch. There's really, it's been pretty horrible to watch, I would go as far as to say. Morecambe beat Fleetwood 4-2. Let's get positive here, because I think this was quite a cathartic win for Morecambe on quite a few levels. Firstly, the amount of goals that they scored. I think a lot of their fans would have said, we've played as well as we played on Saturday quite a few times this season and lost a lot of those games 1-0. Not taking our chances, getting done at the other end, not having quite enough firepower to make the most of our own attacks. And here they just blow Fleetwood away with 4 goals. First time they scored 4 or more this season. It's also cathartic on another level. 2 of these goals scored by Andrew Dallas. He's a new signing. He's a striker. That's the position that they most wanted and needed. But Dallas had been in and around the club for a week or two, but hadn't been able to sign. And it was explained by the board of directors in that statement that I referenced last week that because the ownership hadn't provided source and or proof of funding until the end of the season, the EFL had said, well, you can't sign any players, you can't add any more to the squad. So Dallas was left in limbo. Clearly, his signing means that got sorted. The EFL are happy. Dallas comes in and scores a brace on debut, the sort of penalty box finishing that they've been crying out for. And then, as if by magic, their striker Marcus Dackers, who hadn't scored yet this season in 22 games and about 1,500 league minutes before this, scores his first goal of the season to score their 4th. The thumpiest of thumping headers from a Lewis Cross. A striker celebrating his first EFL goal in his 38th EFL appearance. Highly emotional and understandable celebration from Dackers. brilliant moment. And suddenly you can see so clearly how this win could lead to a little run for Morecambe. We've seen them do it before under Derek Adams. Maybe I'm going over the top here. Maybe Andy Dallas alone doesn't solve all the problems that they have. But there's just something about the atmosphere, something about the way they celebrated those goals that make me think, yes, Morecambe in the next few fixtures are going to be quite a dangerous prospect for their opposition. Take them lightly at your peril. Still work to do, still in the relegation places, but looking up at Tranmere Rovers and thinking, yeah, we could hunt you down pretty quickly if we squeeze together a few more of those wins, because Tranmere are still in miserable form. They lost their second game in a row, 4 of their last 5 at home to Colchester United. First goal was an early penalty. Was there a foul? Quite difficult, I thought, to tell. Jack Payne certainly sold it to the ref, who bought it gleefully, and Lyle Taylor scored it equally gleefully with one of his sort of walking penalties. Tyler scored again, a nice move for the second, involving Edwards and Payne down the left, cutting it back. Taylor finishing well. A solo goal from Edwards in the second half made it 3-1, and the noises from the Prenton Park home end are quite something. Like sort of wounded cattle, I would say, be how I would sum up the howls coming out of those stands, because they think they're watching their team drift, sleepwalk to another relegation to non-league. And I think they probably hoped those days were behind them after their last stint there. They are sitting ducks at the moment for either Morecambe and or Carlisle if they do improve under a new manager, because they're playing so poorly at the moment. The discipline in the squad is terrible. They find it very, very difficult to create chances, and defensively, where they had been solid enough, they are now not that. Losing at home to Colchester, who have won 3 of their last 4, which was as many as they'd won in their previous 17 back-to-back wins for the first time since April for Colchester United. Tell me about Newport 1, Barrow 0. Every time I think Newport are staring down the barrel, they just get a little win out of somewhere.
Yeah, as I said a couple of weeks ago, the way the Newport's games have fallen means they've got loads of these winnable home games. They've still got to play all of the bottom 4 at home, and Bromley and Gillingham, Colchester, Cheltenham, basically most of the bottom half. Barrow, probably the better side here. You know, there wasn't a great deal for Andy Wing to get overly annoyed about. The goal itself was a decent cross from the left-hand side, diverted in by Barrow's defender, Carl Cameron.
It's just made me laugh, that. I reckon Andy Wing was annoyed about losing 1-0 to Newport. You've just told him not much he can be annoyed about.
No, I think in the performance, I think he will say, I mean, I haven't watched the post-match interview. I reckon he was like, yeah, frustrating game, but I thought we were pretty good. I thought we played well for times. We restricted very little. We weren't really clinical enough in the final third, but we played okay, is how I think he'd have said it.
And then the last question would have been just a word for the fans. You know, they've travelled a long way today, and despite the result, they seem like they're really behind the team.
No, he's
whatever we're going to do, we need the fans with us. So, just got to say massive thanks to those who travelled. Huge respect. Thanks for getting behind the team. And we will put this right over the next few games.
What's funny is that I've met Andy Wing a few times through Oxford-related stuff. And I messaged him when he got the Barrow job and said, looking forward to covering you on NTT20. So on the off chance that, having never listened before, he's decided to tune into this and he's heard this analysis, he'll be absolutely baffled that we're just predicting his post-match interviews. So, Wingy, sorry if that is the case. We don't often do this. But yeah, they were pretty good. It was interesting. We spoke about their style of play. It was less attritional here, I would say. Like they took care of the ball a little bit more, maybe given the opposition in the game state. That was why. But yeah, an important win for Newport. That there wasn't much in their performance. I wouldn't say to give you much hope that this will be a sustained run of form. But for Barrow, as I say, they weren't bad by any stretch. Just an own goal that turned the game.
Top team Walsall drew at home to Salford 2-2. They were 2-0 down. Stockton and Elek scoring for Salford. And this is very outcome driven. But just watching Walsall, and I've made it clear I'm not worried about them. I'm not worried about them not getting promoted. I think they'll win the title. Do they just look a little less snappy in midfield? Do they look a little leggier at the back? And there are a few more gaps being exploited than they were previously. I don't know, but that's how I felt watching Salford's 2 goals. Then they came roaring back. They've still got plenty of character. Danny Johnson, I think, is kind of the perfect League 2 striker to come off the bench when you're 2-0 down, in that clearly he doesn't offer what managers want strikers to offer these days in terms of everything outside of scoring goals. But clearly he is still a good penalty box sniffer, and he sniffed out 2 goals to grab a point for Walsall there. And hopefully they can use that kind of confidence and momentum generated in their next game. I was at Wimbledon Bradford, which was a very big game. Bradford having leapt up into the top 3 after a great few weeks. Wimbledon very much, tracking nicely and still with some games in hand as well. And they won 1-0. And they were impressive, Wimbledon, and they deserve this. Bradford only had 1 shot in the second half, with Wimbledon having scored in the first 15 minutes or so. It's a really nice goal as well. 10 minutes in, I just thought to myself, Bradford, there hadn't been a lot of quality play up to that point. The game had been quite bitty, as they often are at Plough Lane. And I just had a thought to myself in the stands that Bradford had looked a little bit better, a little bit slicker in possession. And as soon as I thought that, Wimbledon put together 2 really nice attacks where they looked slick, where they looked good in possession. They built good attacks. The second one led to the goal. Neufeld down the right, in such good form with his dribbling at the moment that he draws 2.5, 3 defenders to him. That opens up the space for Jake Reeves to drop across to the back post where Tilly's the extra man, the wing back. That's just a classic goal for a team playing this formation to score with the extra man at the back post. It was really well taken. Patterson and Sarcevic both had quite good chances for Bradford in the first half, but not a lot in the second half. So Wimbledon, again, seeing out a game really impressively, again showing that they're out of possession shape, their concentration levels, their understanding of the game plan is exceptional. And I sort of, it's local to me, so I go to quite a lot of Wimbledon games, and I haven't got loads new to say, if that makes sense, which you're always hoping for if you go to watch a team, because it's the same every time I watch them. They are great out of possession. They are good enough in possession. They are, unlike some teams that are sometimes a bit dull and a bit blunt in this sort of formation, they do have patterns of play that fairly consistently create good opportunities and good openings for themselves. And the players at the top of the pitch in Bugle and Stevens and Kelly, and in this case Tilly at the back post to score the goals. I always think when I watch Wimbledon, I find it really difficult to pick a man of the match because they all play well without any of them often looking incredible. Like in this game, Reeves had a good game, Tilly had a good game, Ogundere at right centre-back, Smith in midfield as well. But it's none of them ever really stand out above the rest, if that makes sense. But no one ever seems to have a stinker either. And I think that, again, just comes back to the unit that Johnny Jackson has built, the squad that has been built with him and Craig Cope, the fact that all these players have very clear roles that suit them and suit them, the players that they are, where you look at Carlisle as the complete opposite of that right this season. It's really good stuff without necessarily being incredibly exciting, but they've kept the most clean sheets in the league with 13, and they're in fantastic shape looking at those automatic promotion spots. But it's not going to be easy because of the form of Doncaster Rovers and Notts County. George, Donny have won 4 in a row, beating MK's Dons by 2-1.
Yeah, we spoke in the championship segment about players coming in and making their immediate debut, and this was, if we've had some good stories earlier on, but this was an absolute horror show for MK Dons. New centre-back signed from St Johnstone, Jack Sanders just caught out of possession. It was you and I think, both get quite frustrated with the relentless criticism around playing out from the back and how people, every time there's ever a goal that is scored because the team is playing out from the back, it triggers people to be like, why are they doing that? They should never, ever do that. Like, it's outrageous, even though it kind of fails to understand that it's probably happened about 1 million times, or, at least tens of times without an issue that may have actually had a positive impact on the game. I haven't seen any St Johnstone play football, I don't think ever in my life, if I'm honest. But I'm assuming that maybe Sanders isn't often asked to play out from the back quite as he did here, because the ball that he plays is a ridiculously high tariff ball where he passes it into the holding midfielder. He's almost kind of got his back to him, and it's very easily mopped up and finished off by Joe Ironside. Hogan with a really good finish to get MK Dons back into the game early in the second half before new Donny striker Rob Street with a good finish into the far left-hand corner to make it 2-1. Donny really good value for their lead. MK maybe not quite as bad as it had been in recent weeks, but still not very good, I wouldn't say. And an alarm bell still massively ringing about what's going on at MK. But Donny 4 in a row and very much looking like one of the sides who are going to push. They're going to push them also all the way if they are going to drop off in terms of their output.
David McGoldrick's fun, isn't he? Notts County 2, Gillingham 1 at Priestfield.
Yeah, just an incredible goal from Didsey, this one. One of my favourite goals I think we've probably seen all season in terms of the first touch, kind of just about squeezing it under the defender, and then just the most audacious chip to finish off the chance. He's someone who we know his quality is very, very obvious, and he's showing it relatively consistently. Notts County, again, pretty good value, I would say, for their win here against Gillingham. Gillingham haven't really picked up under John Coleman. Ceruda scored the first goal from a set piece. They were 2-0 up after 20 minutes after that Didsey goal. They kind of dropped off a bit. Gillingham scoring with 10 minutes to go or so. But County kind of did all the good work early. And again, a side who are picking up points at a time where Walsall are struggling to maintain their lead at the top. And you're looking at these teams now, Wimbledon, Notts County, Donny as being the sides who are trying to chase them down.
Yeah, Donny 52 from 29, Notts 50 from 28, Wimbledon 48 from 27. So on Soccer Stats, the PPG for Donny 1.79, for Notts 1.79, for Wimbledon 1.78. They are, at the moment, the strongest of the chasing pack. Crewe made it 3 without a win. They drew 1-1 at Harrogate. Chris Long equalising a Josh March first half goal for Harrogate. Crewe's performance level not quite as high in the last couple of weeks as you would want if you are looking at automatic promotion as your end goal, but still so difficult to beat. They have no one in League Two has lost fewer games than them this season. And Port Vale Accrington, that was 2-1 to Vale. They are still in the playoff places, despite what was that quite alarming slide, wasn't it? They didn't win in 8. Now it's 3 wins in 4, unbeaten in the month of January in 5 games. I dug a little deeper and looked at some of the performance data to see if they're back in business and back to being the team they were first few months of the season. And I don't think they are, really. I'm still not sure they're playing that well, Port Vale. They're not making it easy for themselves with these first half red cards they're getting. Tom Sang, it didn't look like a red card foul to me. It looked like a slightly late tackle in the midfield without huge amounts of excessive force. But the referee disagreed and sent him off. They were 1-0 up at the time. I'll never get bored of watching Jaden Stockley flying headers. Absolutely textbook from him. Walton equalised for Accrington, but 10 men of Vale scoring the winner. And it was a lovely goal too. Jaheim Headley, who I think has been a great addition for them at left wing back, combining with Garrity, and then a slip through ball to Laurent Tolage, who smashed it in. Not great from an Aki point of view with an extra man on the pitch for Vale to be able to find that amount of space, but a great goal. And I think, fairly clearly, whatever I think about their performance level, the slide has been arrested, the ship has been righted a little, and Vale are in the playoff places. And you wouldn't back against them having another run at some point, just because of the squad that they have and because of the manager that Darren Moore is. A good win for them. Then we had, if McGoldrick's goal, George, was the most sexual goal of the weekend, was Danny Rose's for Grimsby in their 2-0 win at Bromley the most innovative goal of the weekend?
Yeah, it's disallowed. I kind of thought that putting the ball between your legs and moving around was like I remember back in the day until you couldn't do that. But, an incredible goal. I don't know what you call it. He was on his bum. He gets the ball in between his feet and he just scoops it over his head. Goal. Yes. And Grimsby, having had such a strong away record, have really struggled on the road in recent weeks, but bouncing back here with a 2-0 win over Bromley. Bromley, one of these sides in League Two, had a good little run. Ali said, look out for Bromley, keep your eye on Bromley. And ever since then, they've lost every single game.
Brilliant. I'm excited for Grimsby's signing from the Faroe Islands to start playing. Geza David Turi, they've signed from Vikingur, having signed, obviously, Jason Daddy Svan Thorsen in the summer from Iceland. Pretty fun, I think, Grimsby signing players from Iceland and from the Faroe Islands. I think it's fair to say we're all for that. I think Svan Thorsen's been an all right signing. I don't think he's been incredible, but I don't think he's been... I think he's been a pretty decent squad member that's probably taken a bit of time to get up to speed, but I think overall a decent addition. And I just can't wait to see this lad... Geza David Turi, who I understand is a sort of deep-lying technical midfielder. They've got a few of those already in George McEachran and in Evan Curry, so it might not be easy to break in. But, the Jason Stockwood, who was the co-chairman, I believe he stepped down now because he's running for mayor. He spoke in an article about Grimsby using Jamestown Analytics, which is probably better known as Tony Bloom's consulting company. And so it's not that surprising that having access to Bloom's shortlists and stuff would lead to some pretty funky signings, because that's what we've come to expect from Brighton and from Union Saint-Gilloise and clubs with a Bloom fingerprint on them. So I think we can put some of these funky signings down to that, and we can say, fair play, Grimsby, you're fishing in different waters. You are looking outside the box, and I'm all for that. Cheltenham 1, Chesterfield 0 was a tight game. Elek looked bright on debut for Chesterfield. I think he'll do well for them. They need to replace Markande and Berry, and I think in Elek they have done that and will do that if he can stay fit. I think he'll be too good for the level in attack. Day made a brilliant save for Cheltenham at 0-0. And then towards the end, the opposition goalkeeper, Max Thompson, he made a save from a Jordan Thomas shot, but he pushed it straight out and it was tapped in by Arkell Jude Boyd. It struck me researching this morning that Arkell Jude Boyd scans really well into 1977 pop classic Ça plane pour moi. So stick that on YouTube once we say goodbye and sing along with Arkell Jude Boyd, 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 Arkell Jude Boyd. Arkell Jude Boyd. Cheltenham had lost 7 of their first 11 games at the start of the season. Remember that? We were very worried about them. Needn't have been. They're rolling now, and now in the top half, having beaten Chesterfield. The promotion places, playoff places, slipping away somewhat for Paul Cook's side. Thank you for listening. Thank you to George for being a legend, and thanks to FOTMob for sponsoring FOTMob Corner. Enjoy the NTT20.com transfer day, deadline day coverage. My brain is fried and it's just hit midday, so let's see how we go over the next 12 hours. Cheers and go well.